This is IBM Museum, and I've been working on cleaning and restoring that IBM PS2 Model 60 on the bench behind me. Some of the areas I've gone through, I mean, took a lot of work. There's still a lot of work to be done as far as cleaning the system before I have it fully ready to go. But one of the things that I was doing to ensure the operational condition, a big help to me in the troubleshooting process, is this parallel port postcode reader. And I've done a few videos on these in the past. I've had the link for where you can get these, at least in the US, um, for less than $10 USD delivered to your door. Now, other locations, I'm sure that there's auctions you can get them outside the U.S. I mean, they all come from China anyway, but they're a great thing to have around. They work with every PS2 model out there. Now, the postcode cards, I mean, they started originally as an 8-bit when IBM went through and kind of mid-model, right after they released the IBM PC, they figured out that they needed a little bit better way for diagnostics. So they added actually to the BIOS. The early PC just doesn't support those those 8-bit boards for a postcode. And it really didn't take too much logic. All the BIOS is doing is it's putting out to port 80, and that it just has a latching mechanism that is able to read those values and output it for you to visually see where the system is at, what process as it starts up. And with time, those went through. They had I've I've even got PCI versions of those. I mean, it's a dual bus where you use one edge of the PCB, plugs in the PCB into the PCI slot, and you rotate it around. And you have to be careful on orientation, of course, as I'll show on the board I've got there on the bench behind me. But you went through and plugged it into the bus. Now, on the microchannel side, there just really was maybe a couple implementations that I've seen around, including the one adaptation that I'll show. And so much so that Tube Time here, even just within very recently, put out a design. He went through over a span of time to do the board layout and go through and determine which components he would need. He's gone through and released that. I'll show that, and I'll actually link that in the video description as well. Let me get to where I can interact with the page. And of course, since this is in OBS, it's wanting me to go through, and it's not logged into my Twitter account or anything like that. But you don't even have to be on a member to have an account on Twitter to be able to view this, at least. But there's the board design. He calls it the MC Mechanic uh, for microchannel, and of course has all the same hilarious sorts of indicators on the board of where you plug it in and things like that. Um, it does have some components. It even uses uh, an info panel that was on the Model 95s and other systems. It's a few other systems. Um, but it's just, this is a wonderful thread. And people can go through and look this over if they haven't seen this previously. Even there's the Curious Mark PS2 Model 77 that's there, and talk a little bit of the diagnosis there. And I went through and I recommended the parallel port postcode reader at that point because I knew that they had a system with a parallel port. It was rather than trying to find at that point in time a microchannel postcode reader. So yeah, go through, check out the thread that I'll link in the video description. All sorts of reactions. um, and memes of take my money and everything else. I mean, the design is out there. So it's really good to go through and to look that over. If I didn't have any other way, I mean, yeah, in fact, I may want to go through and try and build my own of that MC mechanic as well. But I'm gonna get off the internal webcam here, and I'll get turned around and show what I have. And I was aware at the early stages, and I responded uh, to Eric Tube Time US that I had this little thing that it plugged into microchannel. I was pretty sure by the way that it said the post probe, and I knew what it did. I mean, it provides an 8-bit slot. It was an adaptation of their particular postcode reader, and that's just because you know the way that the microchannel does that a little bit is a little bit more the ports and things like that. We'll look at that in a moment as well. But I finally got the entire, and this I've had for probably several months at this point, and it's got the same interposer that's below, and it is the post probe from Micro 2000 Incorporated. They even have a copyright of 1993. And there they have the 2-digit error code they mark. And of course, with the parallel port version, it has the completed over on the left 2-digit, the last completed, and then it has the current postcode. And that way, if it stops, that's the on the right 2 digits is that halt code, place where it stopped in BIOS. And you got to go through and determine a little bit more. I'm dropping stickers. I noticed the one sticker fell off. I'll have to retrieve it, but it's the same thing of assembled in Mexico. So you can see there's the solder side. On the component side, of course, it also has voltage things. Get my camcorder to focus here. And an arrow, warning, arrow must face side back of computer. And they just don't want you to get this effectively. Wow, if I had these separate before. They just don't want you to get this turned around the wrong way. I mean, you could insert that both ways on the PC. I'm certain of this, that it's a solder side to solder side, component side to component side. Now, it's got even some test points in there as well. You see other signals. And certainly Tube Time US, he went through and he wanted to have those other signals available, not just a simplistic readout of his version of it. Now, in the corner here, and this even has some sticky tape over the top of it. So it's got the IO port on the left. That's where you see that 80 and 84. And then it has the 4 switch settings, effectively the bits basically that you're setting to select up the addresses. Now, 80 was the original for the IBM PC and XT. I think probably the AT as well. Compact just had to be a little bit different, so they went with port 84 on a lot of their systems. Port 90, I know that was for the PS2 Model 25 and Model 30. It's got those set on port 90 as far as I know. I can go through and empirically test it as well. I'm not really familiar with what port 300, IO port 300, which systems that was implemented. If you know, please leave a comment on this video. And then lastly, we have that 680. Now, I'm pretty sure, especially with an 8-bit board designed like this. I mean, you have address lines and things like that, but the PC and XT only decoded that 8-bit bus out so far. So many I/O ports. I think it's 64K of I/O ports that are um, recognized or implemented with the XT design. Um, now, and that's just why that 680 stands out. Of course, I did a little bit of research. Went through the port list just to be certain, and 680 is for the microchannel setting. Now, I don't know why they didn't go through and just decode on this somehow and make it basically be able to pass that setup to the 8-bit just with the interposer. You plugging into a microchannel system. I mean, it just makes sense to have that go through and work from port 680 instead of port 80. I mean, to me, I think it'd be easy, but I mean, they go through and they implement those other two, that port 84 and port 90 and port 300. So maybe it'd be a little bit more confusing. So it looks like for port 80, we need to set that as a hexadecimal 5 in this case, with off, on, off, on by the decoding I'm able to see. I mean, there's a little bit of solder over the top. I think it reads, I want to see what the numbering is for that. Right to left. Yeah, get my ring light. Excuse my dirty hands. I mean, I've been working. So we want to have 2 and 4 on and 1 and 3 off. So there is our, I just leave the tape kind of hang away. Later on, we can check that on our Model 30 real easily to see. And I'll go through, and again, I'm going the silk screen or component side to component side. And this is made in USA, even though it was assembled in Mexico. So we're gonna go through, and I do have the Mul 60, plugged in. I've gone through and cleaned it. I mean, I certainly think it's in an operational condition right now. I do have the parallel port postcode reader plugged in. They don't go through and interfere. It's all independent in this case. And I do have, we see a little bit of the flashes behind on that monitor because that is what I have the video output of this Mul 60 connected to. So let's go through and power up. It'd probably be good for me to connect up my keyboard and power. I go through and I unplug this at night, of course, or when I'm away from that, when I have something like this on the bench. I don't want to have that circuitry live. So learning or teaching moment with that. Yeah, I wasn't prepared. Didn't have the keyboard plugged in. Didn't have the power cord plugged in. But you know my videos. Okay, now we're a little bit better set. I still don't see anything turning over. I mean, I see the light strobing, and I realize it's a little bit off. Low battery, low battery. I don't know if that's a warning of my, I think that's my keyboard talking to me. But yeah, I didn't go through and I didn't see, even with this set to 680, I didn't go through and see this turn over at all. Just looking for a little, yeah, we can go through and of course we learned about all the F1 process with the we see the display loading and everything here. I'll have to discover why this didn't have, it just has 00 up there right now. And we're going to we still have these warnings of yes, no, whatever, F1 for more of that stacker. I don't want to interrupt necessarily anything. Pressing the key. And I think F10 was the exit to DOS. So I'm going to go to power down. I want to go through. You know, we're seeing other things strobe through. Just want to make sure that this, do have this set to 680. I'm using their version of the interposer. I mean, I would think that that would work. If we don't get a reaction here, I'll just, rather than pressing F1, I'll go through and when I get the 161, 163 errors or whatever it is. Oh, there we go. So I went through and I flipped the switch a little bit better. And of course, it's effectively upside down. It does have 66, the same as the code there. 6D. So we see that turnover now. I mean, again, I realize it's off kilter. You can kind of see a little bit of the digits there where it's got 72. And just the lighting and everything else, it's hard to effectively see that as well. But at least we have it effectively working now. I was kind of worried there because I knew that 680 was the correct I/O port. And by the way, that's 680 hex. Maybe something on the postcard just needed to, we're being prompted for our answer again. Just doing in for no. Okay. And then our F10 to exit to DOS. So everything works good there. I'll probably go through and I'll do a picture of that for the thumbnail of the video. I think that's kind of interesting. So we've gone through, we've checked that out a little bit more. Who knows? I could go through and I could really, I'd like to get one of those the microchannel postcard reader from, well, the design is out there. To go through and to build one of those of my own. Thanks to Tube Time for designing that. So I think that'd be kind of cool to check out at some point too. But we'll go through and we'll use this adapter on other systems. I want to go through and use it on the Mul 30 just because I know that port 90 being a little bit different from the earlier XT IO port for postcodes. So that's the microchannel, effectively with the interposer. postcode postcode reader. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click on that like button, please. As always, subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. But this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.